All right, ladies. Power lesson, Tuesday power lesson, cravings, mindless eating, and of course, the hormone dopamine. So September is all about hormones. Now, of course, we can't get to every single one, but do know that each one plays with the other ones. They all help stimulate and regulate and balance each other out. So when one or two or three of them are out of whack, the other ones don't really work so well either, and they try to compensate. So I'm going to start today with a little story. On January 2nd of this year, my stepfather passed from complications with Parkinson's disease. Now, Parkinson's slowly eats away at your brain's ability to make dopamine. Now, there are various symptoms along the way, including depression, muscle stiffness, jitteriness, and many, many more. And he had every single one of them. In his day, he was a pediatrician. He was well respected in the community and a real lover of life. He loved to go everywhere and do everything. He was in great overall health, as far as we knew, until he was diagnosed, and he exercised every day. He was never overweight and never had any other real issues. His zest for life, though, faded as his dopamine faded. He took all the prescribed medications, he participated in all the new studies, and read all the papers about Parkinson's. But it wasn't enough. And it was really sad to see him deteriorate in that way. Now, being trained as a pediatrician, well over 50 years ago now this was long before we really understood what we learned last week about the need to protect your liver and feed your gut. Now, my stepfather laughed at me about 9 years ago when I told him my son was about 2 years old at the time, and he was his pediatrician, and he had all kinds of issues. He was on antibiotics for many things, ear infections. He just had a bunch of issues, and he had eczema on the back of his legs that was really painful for him. And I told his pediatrician, my stepfather, that I was like, hey, like I started giving James probiotics and his eczema finally cleared up. And he said to me, and this was 9 years ago, so granted, that wasn't really common knowledge at that point about probiotics. And he said, Rose, that's ridiculous. The gut bacteria has nothing to do with the skin. Now, of course, several years later, now him suffering from Parkinson's, but never giving up hope, he called me and he said, because of course he was always read all the studies, all the newest things, like he was an avid reader and he loved to study and research things. And he called me up and he said, well, Rose, it looks like you may be right after all. They are finding that Parkinson's may actually start in the gut and travel up the vagus nerve to the brain. Now, I have no idea where those studies are at now, but I will tell you that your gut, and this is now common knowledge, even doctors and pediatricians now recommend and even prescribe probiotics when you're taking an antibiotic, but your gut health is very important to your overall health. That means that everything that you put in there has an effect on every other cell, system, and organ of your body. That means that everything you eat, everything you drink, everything you think, because that creates hormonal responses as well, and everything you do all have long-term effects on this beautiful body that you live in. Okay, so more about dopamine. Dopamine. Well, okay. So it motivates the brain for reward. Remember that saying that we are either going towards pleasure and or away from pain? Well, if we take that for face value, then half of what we do is because it's pleasurable. There is a reward. Think of all the things that you find pleasurable, everything that gives you a reward. Watching TV, going for a walk, talking with a friend, sex, food, feeding others, taking a bath, reading, playing games, making money, spending money, eating more, cooking, getting a massage, giving a massage, shopping, driving fast, drinking coffee, alcohol, praise, encouragement, winning, following your dreams, traveling. All of these things are wonderful. So Dr. Lustig, who we interviewed last week, he says that information alone, though, is not enough. Just knowing what to do or what not to do, quote. He said, one thing that I've learned after 40 years in medicine is that if you don't understand and tell people why something will work, they will never do it. So this is why we come to you with little power lessons. Now, of course, this is a short little segment. Like there's no way that I can get every idea and every concept in the web of how every little action interplays with each other. But if you really like the sciencey, nerdy kind of stuff and you want to read up more, I'm going to put the link to this book. This is one of Dr. Lustig's book. It says The Hacking of the American Mind, and he goes deep into everything dopamine and everything that's going on with our hormones. Okay, so everything I say always goes back to the basics. What we eat, what we drink, what we think, and what we do make a difference. Now let's get into the specifics of dopamine, which is a hormone and a neurotransmitter. That means that it has influence over almost every aspect of life worth mentioning. Remember the reward. So our mood, our attitude, our ability to feel joy and pleasure, how and if we move, etc., etc. So what's interesting though about our pleasure centers, I did not turn off my notification. Sorry about that. Is our experiences, right? Like our experience of food. So like when we eat foods that are fatty, the fat activates areas where you experience mouth feel, right? So when you eat it, so you think of like an avocado or nuts, or those are healthy, fresh, alive, and vibrant foods. So I'm going to stick with those. The sensation in your mouth while you're eating it is an experience and it's pleasurable. While sugar activates the limbic system where you experience reward. Taking the sugar molecule apart, glucose and fructose activate different parts of the brain. And fructose specifically lights up the reward center. So that's the part that makes us go, yes, I like it and I want more. Now, sucrose, which is half fructose, half glucose, that's like table sugar, establishes hardwired pathways for craving in these areas that can be identified with brain scans. Now, the effects of fructose on dopamine are lessened in obese people, suggesting that they have fewer receptors due to tolerance. Now, dopamine, a neurotransmitter and a hormone, that when released, acutely can cause feelings of reward, but when released chronically, meaning over and over and over and over and over again, reduces the number of its receptors, leading to tolerance. Dopamine receptor is the protein that binds dopamine to generate the reward signal, and when reduced in number leads to tolerance. Now, this is worth repeating in a different way. When we stimulate our reward center by eating, drinking, thinking, and doing things that produce more dopamine, for example, sugar, flour, processed food, alcohol, coffee, juice, internet surfing, shopping, spending money, making money, going on vacation, swimming, reading, paying off debt, going for a walk, CrossFit, watching TV, playing games, planning for a future, having sex, thinking about having sex, eating, and eating, of course, more eating. Of course, we feel good. Now, dopamine is good. We certainly would not be alive or enjoying life without it, because we wouldn't be eating or procreating, because we just wouldn't care. However, as with all good things, too much is too much. Just like with too much insulin, your cells become insulin resistant. And just like with too much leptin, which we learned in last week's lesson, your brain can become resistant to leptin signals. It never gets the signal that you've had enough, so it never downplays the dopamine. Your cells then can become resistant to dopamine, and then you never feel satisfied. You never actually get the pleasure from the pie. And it's easy to move from that one bite to the whole pie and never really feel satisfied until you are physically stuffed and you cannot get one more bite in. Now, of course, throw in the smell of someone making processed foods or an enticing commercial, and you have no defense. You're in the pantry looking for something, seemingly mindlessly eating, like we've talked about, but really, your mind is actually desperately searching for the reward. You might not be conscious of it, it might not be a thought that you had, but your brain knows and it's looking for it. Now, we end up trying to stay in that sweet spot, somewhere in between the too low dopamine, where we feel unmotivated, unhappy, and lethargic, and the too high dopamine, where we feel anxious, paranoid, and irritable. And then the sweet spot is where we feel great and motivated and energized for life. And we just kind of like flow between the two, trying to figure it all out, trying to balance it ourselves. And our body's like, what are you doing? Okay, so what can we do? Notice how I said that one of the ways our brain knows when to move the reward seeking dopamine to the pleasure received experience is through leptin saying, we've had enough, thank you. But if the insulin is high, then there's no signal coming. The brain cannot see it. And insulin gets high when we eat processed food, too much food, and of course, stress. Boom. Now you know why I'm always saying, focus on eating fresh, alive, and vibrant foods. Foods that have nutritional value. Foods that are full of vitamins and minerals and nutrients and enzymes and antioxidants and fiber and water and things we don't even know of yet. Real foods. Foods that have one ingredient. Foods that feed the gut and protect the liver. These are all the same foods. Blood sugar is affected by what we eat, what we drink, what we think, and what we do. All hormones interplay with each other. Okay, so first things first. What are we going to do about this? First we got to relax, right? You never want to stress out about relaxing. You never want to stress out about being healthy. Like that is totally counterproductive. And that is often what we end up doing with diets and other plans where we're just super focused on losing the weight and we just got to do it and stay focused. That is not helpful long-term. So let's relax. Let's take in a few deep breaths. Let's roll our shoulders back, soften the shoulders a little bit, create a little bit more space in the heart center. Stimulate the autonomic nervous system, that parasympathetic part of it, the rest and digest part. And you can do that instantaneously with simply slowing down, pausing for a moment, rolling back your shoulders, rolling your chin upward, and taking in a nice deep breath. Next, we can drink some water. Fresh, clear, revitalizing, wonderful water that stimulates all the right systems in the body. Next is to eat some fresh, alive, and vibrant, wonderful foods that have fiber. Fiber protects the liver and feeds the good bacteria in the gut 100%. And I'm not talking about psyllium husk that you put in the water and you take a shot of it. There's that saying, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. You cannot take a food apart, highly process it, and then give it back to us. And that's what they've done with processed food, because fiber degrades because all life likes to eat fiber. And so the bacteria on the shelves and it starts to go bad. So they take the fiber out, they put the chemicals in, they put it on the shelf. Then they realize, oh, we're all sick and we're not well. Oh, we actually need the fiber. All right, let's process that and then give it back to them as a supplement. That's not what I'm talking about. Lord, please eat real food. Real food has fiber. Fiber are things that grow. Right? So every nut, seed, vegetable, fruit, grain, everything that grows has fiber. So make sure that you're getting fiber. Fiber still gives you the reward because it travels with vitamins and minerals and sugars and natural things like that and fat, like avocados. But it's slowed down. It's slowing down the release little by little over time so that your system is never bombarded, overloaded, and then trying to seek balance. Choose activities from that wonderful list of those rewarding activities that give you either a little bit of dopamine or give it over an extended period of time, such as writing that book that you've been writing to write, taking that class you've been wanting to take, talking to a friend that you haven't talked to in a while, journaling, planning a vacation, going for a walk. all of these things also give us that a reward. It's just not a super intense one in that 1 second. It's a slow release. So see, we can still have it all. An example of a super high dump of dopamine, and we're going back to talking about food, is going to be a breakfast of coffee and a pastry. Boom, you have just started your day completely out of balance. Now, instead, try eating a breakfast with a long, sustained, slow drip of dopamine with foods that protect the liver and feed the good bacteria in your gut. And throughout the morning, a breakfast that might include a veggie omelet with a side of fruit and a cup of oatmeal with some water. Now that is large and in charge, and you will be satisfied all morning long. You will have balanced the dopamine. You're still going to get the reward and the pleasure from it, and it's going to be sustained and long term without having to then figure out how to get back and get back and get back to that sweet spot. Listen, it does matter. It matters, right? And it's not personal. That's what I love about the science. And again, I'm going to put the link to this beautiful book. There's a lot of books out there, but this one really is specific to what it is that we're talking about here. And it really takes the moral issue out of it, right? Because there's so many times that I've looked in the mirror, looked down at my body, and I just have either cried or been, in disbelief or just disgust. And that's an opinion, right? That's an emotion. I'm being very emotional about the extra weight on my body, or I used to be, right? But the reality of it is, inside the body, the cells aren't emotional about it. They're not crying about it. They're just like, well, this was the signal that we were given, and so we stored the extra energy. What else were we supposed to do? That's what we were told to do. Right? And so what we want to do now, when we understand a little bit more about how the body works and why it works, and we take the judgment out of it and just really get down to the science, because the science doesn't have emotion, right? The science is just facts. This is how it works. You have an in, you have an out, you have a cause, you have an effect. This is how it works. So the more that we begin to understand about really what's going on inside, the better decisions that we can make. And we begin to go, oh yeah, my experience has changed. Oh yeah, I do feel better. I do feel lighter. I do feel more calm and present. And these are the kind of things that are going to help us long term with our health and our vitality to make better and better choices for ourselves each day. Okay, you are wonderful, beautiful, and amazing. I would really love to know if you found benefit from this power lesson. So let me know down there in the comments if you relate to what it is that I'm talking about. If you've had these sorts of experiences where you're like, oh my God, my dopamine center is out of control and I am just in the zone and I can never actually find the pleasure from what it is that I'm eating until all of a sudden I'm too full and I don't feel so great. Okay, so tomorrow I have a special announcement for you. And of course, Thursday, we are going to be hearing from one of our own, Miss Marion Knopf. I'm so excited for our special guest. All right, hope you're having a beautiful day. I'll talk to you soon.